Hello everyone, I am a serious man. I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to do a video on She-Hulk, but then Disney did it again. As soon as the show dropped and the legitimate criticism started coming in, the mousebots came out in earnest, ragging on the fans who don't like their crappy product. And I couldn't just let it go, so here goes. Following right on the heels of the premiere of the new Disney Plus show She-Hulk Attorney at Law, this Twitter post dropped, among others, the usual suspects, declaring that anyone who doesn't like She-Hulk is a misogynist. That goes for anyone who doesn't like any of the other powerful women of the MCU. Interestingly, as soon as I saw this post, I was almost immediately blocked by the account that created it, even though I didn't interact with it in any way. Luckily, Nina Infinity screenshot it, and so here it is. Look, we don't have a problem with strong female characters. We love strong female characters. We loved Black Widow from her introduction in Iron Man 2 all the way through her sacrifice in Endgame. We loved Wanda from the time she was fighting against the Avengers in Age of Ultron through the moment she was raining hell down on Thanos, only to be shown up by the upstart Captain Marvel. We loved Wanda, powerful as she was, up until the moment we learned that she had imprisoned and tortured an entire town, and that we were meant to accept that she was totally justified in it, and also that she was being completely reasonable when murdering innocent people to perpetuate her own familial delusions. We didn't think that Captain Marvel assaulting a man simply for speaking to her and stealing his jacket and motorcycle were heroic actions. And we don't think that She-Hulk attempting to kill a few defenseless men just for asking her name makes her a strong and relatable character. We, critics of the MCU, don't have a problem with strong female characters. The problem we have is that Disney isn't giving us any.
He's a serious man. He's a serious man. A serious man. A serious man.
Disney Marvel has a woman problem. They don't know how to write them. The current crop of Disney writers are talentless, witless, immoral people, and they're ruining Marvel's female characters with their horrible messaging. They've taken these female characters, many of whom we love, given them all of the personality flaws and defects of the male characters, without providing them with the conflict, sacrifice, or any of the redeeming characteristics that made those previous characters likable and relatable. Tony Stark was a confident, narcissistic, overly competent character, but that's not why we liked him. We liked him because he was conflicted. Despite his wealth, intelligence, and outward self-confidence, he was always questioning himself and pushing himself to be better. He wasn't a strong character because of his wealth, competence, and self-confidence. He was a strong character because he was constantly facing and overcoming adversity. Real adversity, not just figments of his imagination. And just as importantly, he was a strong character because he came to accept responsibility for his actions and went on to sacrifice himself for others. Something that is severely lacking in these new female characters that are being thrown at us. Thor wasn't a strong character because of his overblown ego either. He was a strong character because he had to learn humility and selflessness in order to prove his worth. He was a strong character because of his loss and because of the growth that he achieved through conflict. He was a strong character in spite of his personality flaws, not because of them. It is in overcoming their ego and selfishness in order to work toward a greater goal that made these characters great. And while they never totally rid themselves of their personality quirks and defects, and we wouldn't want them to, they were able to overcome themselves to accomplish something greater. And this is something that is totally lost on the new crop of Mickey Mentors, and the product suffers as a result. Rather than show the characters' strength by showing them overcome real adversity, we are constantly being told how great they are by tertiary characters. Instead of building up the female heroes, they're constantly tearing down the existing male ones so that the women look better by comparison. This is just bad writing at its worst, and totally unnecessary as well. Just makes the female characters that much weaker to have to tear down and diminish the male heroes just to prop up the female ones. And again, it just isn't necessary. I think the best way to demonstrate this is with a little contrast. Take the scene from Iron Man 2, where Black Widow and Happy are infiltrating the Hammer Industries facility where the villain is staging his attack on the Stark Expo. Happy here doesn't know that Natasha is a S.H.I.E.L.D. super spy. He thinks he has to protect her. She clearly doesn't need his help and demonstrates her expertise throughout the action sequence. But notice that while Happy is no super spy and definitely no competition to Black Widow, he isn't totally incompetent either. While Natasha moves through the facility, stealthily taking down guards left and right, Happy engages in a long, drawn-out fistfight with one of the guards. He is more than competent for this single one-on-one confrontation with a lone guard, and in the end, he is victorious. But by that time, Black Widow has already taken out a dozen guards and infiltrated the facility. Happy isn't a superhero, he's just a regular Joe. The fact is, he's done quite well. If this had been Thor or Iron Man or Captain America, it would have been pathetic. But because Happy is just a normal guy, it doesn't diminish him to show him being vastly outperformed by the Russian super spy. In fact, his relative struggle with the single guard, next to Black Widow's easy takedown of the others, simply goes to show the result of the training and expertise of Natasha. That makes an otherwise competent fight between Happy and the guard look relatively weak by comparison. Happy gets out of the scene pretty well. He's won a fight that was clearly a challenge to his regular guy level of competence. And meanwhile, we get a glimpse of Black Widow's crack-shot super spy abilities. It's a win-win. Now look at She-Hulk. Right out of the gate is just so much better than her male cousin at everything. In fact, she's basically perfect. We're shown in a montage She-Hulk besting the male hero at one thing after another. Remember that she's only had her powers for a couple of days, and already she's better, faster, and stronger than the Hulk, who's been training and honing his ability for decades. And she's able to fully control her transformation from the start, where it took Banner 15 years to achieve even a modest level of control. And even that is only maintained with the help of technology. She has the intelligence, ego, self-confidence, and competence of Tony Stark, without the sense of responsibility or any of the internal conflict of that character. She has all of Hulk's powers and strengths, only better, without any of the control issues or internal struggle that make that character interesting. If we go back and take a look at the way they treated Wanda's character through Age of Ultron, we can see an example of a much better character arc. She follows a very similar path to Tony in that movie. She begins by acting out of a sense of fear and anger at a past injustice, the death of her family, which she blames on Tony Stark, and in a way, her fear is projected onto Tony through her mental manipulations. Tony acts upon his own fears of a future where the Avengers have been defeated by an alien invasion to create Ultron, something which Wanda has foreseen and an action toward which she's actually partially responsible for inspiring through her vision. When Ultron goes on the loose, Tony is forced to take responsibility for his mistake by going out and defeating his creation. Wanda must eventually make the same decision when she discovers that Ultron is set on global extinction and not just the destruction of the Avengers. She takes responsibility. Ultron is just as much a creation of hers as it is of Tony's, because she's the one who set Iron Man on the path to create him. And in order to atone for her mistake, she joins the Avengers in the fight against the evil AI army of robots. In Civil War, we see Wanda's and Tony's characters develop even more. Wanda accidentally kills the delegation of Wakandan ambassadors while fighting terrorists, and she begins to doubt herself. Tony, meanwhile, is confronted by the ramifications of Sokovia, the destruction caused by his creation Ultron. And he also begins to doubt himself, and decides to accept the oversight of the UN, a way of acknowledging that he needs accountability. A big step for the man who previously told the government to F off. Is he simply shifting responsibility, as Cap seems to think? Perhaps. But it is a big step for the character. Both characters, Tony and Wanda, face adversity, self-doubt, and are forced to accept what has happened and move on. Tony decides to give up autonomy and submit himself to the authority of a global body. Wanda decides to stop hiding away after her mistake and go back out to join the Secret Avengers in defending the world. They both have to grapple with the problem, overcome it, and move on in their own way. They both grow through adversity, and both of them make sacrifices to save the world. Wanda eventually sacrifices the one she loves, and Tony ultimately gives his own life to defeat Thanos, as does Black Widow. In Infinity War, Wanda and Thor both faced Thanos and failed in their own ways. And their failures led to the death of half of all life in the universe. Overcoming real obstacles and making personal sacrifices for others, that is what made them strong characters. That is what made them heroes. Meanwhile, She-Hulk isn't interested in helping people or using her powers for good. She just wants to look cool, scare and possibly murder any men who are stupid enough to talk to her, and pursue her career, showing up all those incompetent males who underestimate her. The only adversity that She-Hulk faces are the imagined injustices that she takes from all of the men who don't immediately acknowledge how much better she is at everything than they are. Boo-hoo. How difficult it must be to actually have to prove yourself as a hero, instead of everyone just acknowledging how perfect you are from the start. Oh boy. Remember how great a character Wanda was before they started intersectionalizing her? Remember just how much you loved her before she started enslaving and torturing a town full of people? And we were told that letting them go in the end was a sacrifice, and that almost destroying the entire multiverse and murdering countless innocents, including tearing through several iconic and beloved heroes from the comic books like tissue paper, in order to be with her imaginary children was totally justified and completely reasonable. Look, when Tony Stark snapped at the end of Civil War and started fighting Captain America and Bucky, we understood his state of mind. We could understand why he reacted the way he did. He had just discovered that the man standing next to him had killed his parents all those years ago, and his friend standing right there next to him had known for some time and had kept it a secret from him. You can bet he would be angry, and the reaction is understandable. The long-held resentment carrying over into Infinity War is also understandable. And yet, we still understand that as hurt and angry as he is, Tony is still in the wrong. Bucky didn't kill his parents, Winter Soldier did, and cold, calculated machine under the programming and control of Hydra. Bucky himself was a slave, an automaton being controlled like a robot by a malevolent entity. Still, Tony didn't lash out at random, innocent, defenseless civilians, as both She-Hulk and Wanda do in the MCU. He directed his anger at the superpowered individuals directly responsible for the source of his anger. And even though we understand his anger and resentment, we do not condone the temper tantrum that results from it, although it does make for one kick-ass battle to close out the film. Wanda, in contrast, has no good reason to enslave a whole town of innocent civilians who never did anything to her. Neither is she justified in murdering innocent people in multiple universes just to be reunited with her children who never really existed in the first place. It would be one thing if Wanda had simply snapped under the stress and trauma of being forced to kill her lover to destroy the Infinity Stone, only to watch him be brought back to life just so that he could get killed again by Thanos. Traumatizing that. If she was in some kind of disassociative state or had suffered a psychotic break, we might accept it. Or if we could be persuaded to believe that the Darkhold was somehow controlling her all along. The problem is that this conclusion is precluded by the writing itself, and by the ideology behind it. Scarlet Witch has to be in total control because the writers can't allow a woman to lose her autonomy to someone or something else. So instead, they have to try and justify her actions, even though they're completely unjustifiable. We are told that she has made things right when she clearly hasn't, and that she's being reasonable when she clearly isn't. And in the end, when she ultimately defeats herself, because you can't have a woman defeated, or even helped, by a man, she never really has to deal with the consequences of her actions. She simply destroys the source of her multiversal power so that she doesn't get tempted to use it again. And even when she finally does decide to just stop being evil on her own, she doesn't do it for others, to save others, because being selfish and hurting other people to advance your own agenda is a bad thing. She ultimately decides to give up on killing everybody for herself, because it makes herself sad. Because instilling her children from another universe, it would mean hurting another universe's version of herself. And ultimately, the children know she's not the real mom now, so she no longer has anything to gain from kidnapping them and pretending to be their mother. So even when she finally does come around and decides to give up her mad dream, she's still doing it for selfish reasons. Because her non-children hate her and it makes her sad. And hurting her other universe's self also makes her sad. And this entire character arc just makes me very, very sad. In reflecting upon the MCU, I can't help thinking about the past greatness of the Marvel Cinematic Universe when characters were actually good. If we look back at Iron Man 2 and remember the antagonist of that film, Justin Hammer was basically a mirror version of Tony Stark. He had the wealth, resources, and a superpowered ego to match the protagonist, but he lacked the integrity, the sense of responsibility, and moral core of the hero. He was completely and totally obsessed with himself, which made him the villain of the story. He was not quite as intelligent as Tony Stark, but smart enough to get by. Not nearly as charming as he thought he was, and none of his jokes landed. Sounds an awful lot like the heroes of the MCU. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you did not like this video, then tell me what a stupid, misogynistic asshole I am in the comments below. And make sure to tell all your friends about this crazy, stupid man who doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
But I was wrong. I was wrong. I thought I knew who you were, but you not the woman I thought you were. You different than the woman I thought you was. But you're different. You're not the woman that I first loved. Bumping around in a hot tub. You're not the woman I first had.